All right, thanks for coming, you guys. I really appreciate it. For those who are not here, I think they're going to miss out on some pretty fun inspiration. So I want to inspire you today. You know, there's been lots of different things that you've learned today and you will learn over the weekend about techniques and places to go and things to do and gear to get. But if it's not up here first, you can't execute it through your camera, right? You need to have some inspiration, you need to have some ideas, and you need to have your headspace in the right place. So I am going to weave a little bit of my former psychology background into this, but I've been a photographer for a long time, and so it is photography oriented. Don't worry, we're not doing therapy tonight. That's tomorrow. But in any case, we're going to go along, and I want you to take a little journey with me. So on that note, I do want to say a quick thank you to Tamron. Tamron has been a wonderful supporter of mine. Their lenses are wonderful, and I'm not saying that because I'm standing here. You'll see it in my images. I adore their equipment. But you know what I also love, and this is really near and dear to my heart, is I adore the people. They have been so amazing, and the people behind the work at Tamron and the equipment at Tamron, they care about photographers. They really want you to have a great experience, and they're like us. They all shoot. They want to have fun. They want you to have fun with the equipment, and they really care about what they do. So thank you to Tamron for that. I also want to say thank you to PhotoPro. So PhotoPro has these amazing tripods, and I use one. I have the Eagle 65. I absolutely adore it. It is the most lightweight thing. It holds 33 pounds. I can use a gimbal and a ball head all in one. It's wonderful. Go check it out upstairs, but it has transformed, and I say this sincerely, transformed the way I shoot and how I travel, and I absolutely love it. It was serendipity that I met this tripod, and we become best friends. So anyway, thanks to PhotoPro Tripods for having me here tonight. All right, let's begin this journey. So a great filmmaker tells a powerful story in about 158,400 sequential frames. That's the typical movie that you'd watch, about that many frames. A great photographer, we do it in one, right? Not bad. So in this case, when I look at, and I've thought a lot about all the things that we do, all these pictures that we take, the photographs. We're out in all these amazing places, out in nature, out in the cities, out in the middle of nowhere, underwater, in space. We're taking all these amazing images, right? But why? What are we doing this for? What's the purpose behind this? And so for me, photography has definitely been a journey, and in so many different ways. But we're going to go on a journey together today. And we're going to first talk about not just our journey, but I really want to start with the actual photograph. Because if we understand our roots, we understand how far we have come and how much further we can go. So first of all, let's just think about a photograph, right? So I'm going to bring us way back in history for just a minute. But when we look at this photograph, anybody know what this one is or have seen it before? Yeah, it's a little noisy, huh? So this initial photograph was called View from the Window at Le Gras, and it was photographed in about 1826. And this is the first known photograph from what we can tell. So this is where it all started. You can blame this guy, Joseph, right? But what I love is in 1826 to today, I can do stuff like this. This was done with my cell phone and a quick post-processing job at home. I can make a tiny whole planet where this guy was just trying to photograph a balcony, right, and test some things out. So we take it a little bit further, and I move up a few years to 1838. And this image, much better than the last one as far as clarity. In just a decade or so, not even, they've really improved the quality. This is Boulevard du Temple, and this particular image is interesting because you can see, if you look here, there is a guy with his shoes being shined, and he shows up because he was standing there long enough for that image to have been taken, and everybody else on the streets has moved, and therefore they've disappeared. So really interesting perspective with that image. But today, I can go stand in my hotel window. I can't do it here because I don't have a good view, but I was in San Francisco and I did it, and I can stand in my hotel window and take a beautiful scene in a matter of seconds. So we're moving a little bit further from that, and this is the first known aerial photograph. It's called Boston as the Eagle and Wild Goose See It, and it was shot from a hot air balloon, which I used to help crew hot air balloon for a while. I can appreciate all the intricacies now with modern day technology, but to do that in 1860 blows my mind. And somebody took a picture as well. So anyway, that's the first aerial shot that we know of. Today, we can shoot from space. This is one of those bomb cyclones that you guys had to deal with here in New York not long ago. Pretty amazing that we can do that now from space. So the first color photograph. You know, when I first learned about photography, I thought, well, color didn't happen until like, oh, I don't know, the 60s, somewhere in there, kind of loosey-goosey knowledge. But actually, the very first color photograph was an award ribbon, and this was done in 1861. So color is well over 100 years old, going on, what, 150? Today, I can shoot vivid color no problem in an instant. This is from the Albuquerque Balloon Festival. First lightning shot, right? You think that's kind of a modern thing, but that happened in 1882. And that, I'm sure, took quite a bit of planning and luck and interesting equipment back in the day. But today, with the grace of technology and a quick trigger, I can shoot handheld because lenses have such wonderful image stabilization built into them, and some cameras do as well. I can shoot handheld when a storm pops up quickly, and I don't have time to go back home and get tripods and lightning triggers and all of those things, and I can shoot lightning shots today in an instant. So I'm gonna skip ahead to this decade, or this century. No, I guess it's not anymore, is it? Last century, 1950s, and the Cape Canaveral launches. And if you look at the line of photographers in the front and all of that crazy gear that they have, and I'll zoom in on it, pretty amazing gear, pretty amazing place. Look at how close they are to the dust and the steam and whatnot from the rockets. That was quite a feat to get those images back in the day. But today, I can go to Merritt Island and be photographing some birds and hear a noise in the background and try to ignore it because I'm trying to focus on the birds. And finally, it's loud enough, I just can't ignore it. And I turn around and I see this, and there's a rocket taking off behind me, and I can go quick snap it with my cell phone, right? So we've come a long way with photography. So with this photography thing that we do, it's been 193 years of taking pictures. And I feel like we've come leaps and bounds, but I feel like we've also just touched the infancy of this. I mean, we're not even at 200 years of photography. What will it look like down the road? So as I thought about photography in the history over the couple of centuries or so that we've been doing it, I really wanted to think about my own journey with photography and try to inspire yours as well, because without inspiration, we won't move forward to the more and more creative, the different images, the new things we see, the new ways we shoot it. And it's about so much, much more than just photography, and I'm going to talk about that too. So first, you know, I showed you photographs, but let's really think about what is a photograph. And so this little part of the experiment was kind of fun. I went online and I went and Googled the definition of a photograph. And the first place I went to was yourdictionary.com. And that website said, well, the definition of a photograph is an image generally taken with a camera. And I'm like, okay, right? It's kind of boring. So I was like, well, I mean, it's truthful, but you know, let's get a little more interesting. There's more to it than that. So then I went to thefreedictionary.com and I said, well, what do they say about what is a photograph? It was a little bit better. They said an image, especially a positive print, recorded by exposing a photosensitive surface to light, especially in a camera. A little more technical. I can accept that a little bit better. But I wanted to see what else was out there. And I also, this question that I'm going to ask you in a minute was brewing in my head too. So anyway, I went to dictionary.cambridge.com. I thought, well, Cambridge has got to know what they're doing. So I went to their definition, and it was an image of a person, object, or view that is produced by using camera and film. They hadn't even updated it to include digital yet. I'm like, okay, Cambridge, you're slacking. So anyhow, so then I went to the next place, Oxford. I'm like, all right, we're going to get a little competition going here with our university. So I went to Oxford, and they said a picture made by using a camera in which an image is focused onto light-sensitive material and then made visible and permanent by chemical treatment or stored digitally. And I was like, That's better. There's still something missing. So I went to one more site. I went to dictionary.com. I'm like, if they can't do it, nobody can, right? So I went here. You know what they said? A picture produced by photography. And I'm like, alrighty then. So I looked at all these definitions, shook my head a little at some of them, but I realized there's something very important that was missing in each of these definitions, and I couldn't believe none of these fancy places got it. And what was missing is you. None of these definitions talked about the photographer, and it is impossible to have an image without a photographer. I don't care if it's the monkey that accidentally took the selfie that one year, or if you set up your trap camera and the camera goes on autopilot for a few days or weeks or months or years or whatever you set it for. Somebody still has to be determining how that camera takes an image and when and so forth. So it is impossible to have a photograph without a photographer. And I thought it was so interesting that all the definitions missed that. So you, right? You are the photographers. You doing this and that and the other things and all the wonderful things that you do out in the field to go have fun, to go find the images, to go experiment, to bring joy into your lives. All of those things, they're all you, right? Happy photographers, sometimes bummed out photographers, but always still on this journey of having fun, getting inspired, trying new things, and more. So tonight is really about you, and that's where I want to keep the focus tonight. So when we talk about a photograph then, we need to talk about our journey. What are we doing this for? Why? Where have we come? Where are we going? What's the whole purpose of all of this? So with the journey and the photography, it can't begin with a photograph unless it also begins with the photographer. So I got these questions going, right? I'm a psychologist. I used to do research. I always have questions about how and why we do things. And so, I translate that into photography. So how and why do we photograph? Well, we study how quite a bit. There's a lot of classes here this week that you're studying how to do something, right? How to get sharpness, a better image, focus, how to use your tripod, your PhotoPro tripod, how to use your camera or get a new camera that does what you want it to do, depth of field, all of that stuff. That's the how. We study how to be a photographer and we get those skills. We get venues for our work, perhaps, right? Whether it's social media or a coffee shop or a gallery or wherever it's going, we love to display our images. We get customers, hopefully, if you're in business to do photography, and we have subjects, whether they're animals, people, or wherever it might be. We get gear. B&H hopes we get better gear, right? But we acquire these things over time, and we upgrade our skills and our gear and our places that we go and so on and so forth. So we know how to be a photographer from that perspective. But what about why? What's the point of all this, right? We know the how, but what about the why? So I did a little research. And I found out that originally with photography, it was done for experimentation. It was the tinkerers of the 1800s that were trying to figure this out for us. And so they experimented and figured out how to make an image, like the very first one that I showed you. All right, fair enough. And then it was for science, right? We're going to experiment some more, maybe do some different things to record things. We use it for record keeping, taking pictures for documentation. And we use it because it was better than a drawing, because before you used to have to draw everything out, and this was faster and better. But more recently, we've been doing it for art. And that's a newer iteration of photography. It didn't used to be that way. So with our art, we can experiment with all kinds of things to capture, and I'm a nature photographer primarily, but we can capture nature or people or landscapes or stars or whatever it is that you're doing. We can capture that in really evocative, creative, and artistic ways. This is an abstract. I love doing creative things. I also used to be a floral designer for 15 years, so I bring a lot of that in. I used to do interiors and do interior decorating with decorators and design things for that. I bring a lot of that influence into my photography as well and create a lot of things for decorative spaces. But I love doing photography for the art of it. All kinds of different ways we can be creative. So that's been a newer iteration of our photography and how we're doing things. And I see now more than ever, we're pushing ourselves to be more artistic. It's a lot of fun to create something new, and people really gravitate to that. So that's fine, we're gonna do the artistic thing, but what about why, again, are we photographers? We've been doing it more for the art versus the science or documentation, but still, what is it that drew you to this, and why, and where are we gonna go with it? So all the things that we do, all the images that we capture, all the fun that we have out in the field, right? Those are some of the reasons why we do photography. But I really wanted to know the heart of it. I didn't want to imagine it. I'm a data girl. I used to love collecting data and analyzing and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of fun because I keep in my life going back and forth between really technical left brain things like psychology and science and research and data. And then I'll go back over to the creative thing, like the floral design, and then I go back, and then I go forward. And I love photography because it blends both. We have the technical side and the creative side. But I did some research, and I asked you the question. So I asked all the photographers that I could find, and there's a lot of them. That's my boyfriend. He's wonderful. There's a lot of people out there trying to learn and do photography and enjoy it and having these experiences. So I polled people, and I asked 560 photographers worldwide, why? Why photography? Because I wanted to get more at the heart of the things that we do and the reasons for doing them. Also, I wanted to figure out some of the reasons why you stop doing them or are afraid to do them, break through some of those barriers. So first of all, to give you a little picture about the who, I asked, we had 37% male photographers that responded and 63% female. Now, I don't have control over who responded. I sent this out in all kinds of different ways. It got shared a million different ways. That was just who responded. So the age groups ranged from 45 to 55. We had 21%, 56 to 65, 38%, and 66 to 75 represented 29%. And then everybody else fell in those other categories. And then I asked, how many years have you been pursuing photography? 1 to 3 years, 7%. 4 to 6 was 17. 7 to 10 years was 13. And then we move up into 11 to 20 years with 16 people, or excuse me, percentage. Then we move up into these upper brackets, and I expected it to actually kind of collapse a little bit, but 21 to 30 years was 11%, so a little dip there, but 31 years or more was 36% of the population that responded. And that really struck me because people are still sticking with this 30-some years later. That's a lot. People don't stay in relationships that long. People don't stay in their houses that long. I know you don't stay with the same camera that long, but people have stuck with this photography thing in large numbers for decades, and I found that really powerful. So I asked all of you, I said, describe one of the most memorable experiences that you've had in photography, because it's got to be more than just creating art or documenting things for science. Like, what are you doing, and what are the experiences that you're having? Because that's part of the journey. So I asked, and I can't share with you in this time frame all of the different experiences, but I pulled out a couple, and these were two that I felt struck me. One of them said, I'm a U.S. Army combat veteran diagnosed with cancer and PTSD before retirement. Wildlife and nature photography has been definitely a big challenge in my life, coping with the symptoms and treatment. I found a different world, a world that brings peace and joy into my life. So that's why that person's doing nature and wildlife photography. So then I asked another person, I asked a lot, and I just pulled a couple out of here. One person said, and I love this because the emphasis isn't on the pictures. She said, I have had so many amazing experiences, it's very difficult to narrow down to one. But most recently, I would say, watching a grizzly bear and her 2 cubs for over an hour. The photos are so-so, but the glimpse into their world was magical. So that's another reason why we do photography. It isn't just about the pictures. It's the places we go, the people that we meet, the relationships that we build. You're sitting here because you want to further your knowledge and grow and meet people, or meet up with people again that maybe you saw last year. You get to experience New York. This camera is the tail that wags the dog. The camera gets you to take the photos, but you get to have this huge experience that goes well beyond the camera. And I think that's so important to remember. So this journey thing that we're on, It's really important. It's always going to be a journey. You're going to have new discoveries, new photos, your new favorite places. But this journey is really important. And so one of the things that I want to do, and I've got a few more before we're done, but one of the things is I want to challenge you. And I take this challenge seriously. I'm going to challenge you today, before you go to bed today, on social media, if you have a social media channel. Post your most memorable photography experience. And if you do, I would love it. You can take a picture of this if you want. Hashtag these two things. Langell photo, which is my last name, and feel free and take a quick snapshot so you don't forget, because I'm going to give you a couple other assignments. I guess that's the teacher in me. I used to teach at university too, so I got a lot of different things up my sleeves, which is why I wore rubber bands on my sleeves so I could, pull any of those out if I needed to. All right, so now that you got that picture, please know that the world and I will be reading. And one of the reasons why I'm asking you to do this, post your most memorable experience, is usually we're posting the photos, right? Here's my favorite bear, here's my favorite flower, bird, whatever it might be, landscape. But we don't often get to share on social media these stories and these experiences. And I'm noticing that younger people today, it's a little bit of a different game with photography and how they're getting introduced to photography. I mean, yes, there's cell phones and things like that, but it's so much about the experience, and younger people today are really about experiences over things. And I hate to say millennials, but that is something that they're gravitating towards. And we get so picture focused. Can we also be more experience focused? So if you start introducing people to not only the pictures, but your experiences that you're having, I think you're going to see more people gravitate towards photography because they see it as a 360 thing, not just as do I have the skills or the gear or not? And I think it's so important that people understand the experiences. So that's one assignment for you. So I also asked these photographers what your current status is, amateur or professional. And they said 83% were amateur and 17% identified as professional. Okay, great. So the thing with the amateur thing that bothers me, and I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but I have seen so many photographers, and I have felt this way myself at different points, feel intimidated, feel less than, feel discouraged by their amateur status. And in this country, it's really unique in this country especially. The term amateur tends to mean a negative thing. It's a derogatory comment. Oh, you're just an amateur. Or you see, people say something, that's so amateur, right? Puts it down. But the wonderful thing is the word amateur actually it's a French word, and it means lover of. So I feel like if someone says you're an amateur, I'm like, I am a lover of something, right? Of photography, cooking, whatever it might be. But it really means lover of, and I'd like to change how we perceive that term amateur in the US. So I asked photographers a variety of different questions, and I'm distilling this into one slide. But I asked amateurs how they define themselves as an amateur. Was it income, skills, or something else? So amateurs versus professionals, amateurs said 31% they felt 31% of you that completed the survey felt it was an income-related thing. So unless you were making money at photography, you were an amateur. Professionals said 39%. 39% of professionals said it was about income. And the interesting thing is I then asked both groups, well, how do you think the public perceives it? And they said that the public perceives it as 89% of them believe that amateur versus professional status is about income. So I found it so interesting that they think the public has a very different opinion of what that delineation is than what amateurs or professionals do. And it gets higher as the higher you go, whether it's professional or then onto the public. Just a really interesting summary on that. So then I looked at what some people said, no, it's skill. Skill is the most important thing. And so amateurs said 18% of them said that it was skill related as to whether or not they defined themselves as an amateur or professional. Professionals said 24%. And when I asked them what they thought the public thought and how they decided amateur versus professional status, they said 9%. So I'm like, 18% for amateur, 24% for professional. But we only think the public makes a decision on that. About 9% of the people felt that that was the determination. So interesting. And then we go into the something else category. If it's not income and it's not skills, it's something else. I don't know what that something else is, but I found it interesting that so many people, it resonated with them. 52% of amateurs said it was something else, and that was why they called themselves amateur. Professionals, 11% felt that they defined themselves as a professional photographer due to something else other than income or skill. Their perception that the public would use that as a definition, only 2%. So it's really interesting how we are judging ourselves versus what we think the public thinks about our decisions of amateur and professional. So here's then some of the interactions that I've heard from amateurs. And again, amateur means lover of. However, it's sometimes been poo-pooed. I'm sure many of you in this room have heard the negative comments and the condescension and so forth between some people and others who believe they know more and like everybody to know it. So anyhow, here's some interactions from amateurs I've heard in the field. Now this picture is some friends of mine on a workshop of mine, and we were doing long lens selfies just to be goofy, if you're wondering. So anyhow, so I asked them, have you ever felt comfortable having to identify yourself as an amateur photographer? And if they were professionals at that point, I said, reflect back to a time when you were not. And yes, 22% said they felt uncomfortable identifying as an amateur. Now, it's not the majority, but it's almost a quarter of the population of photographers that I interviewed. I think that's a substantial number to realize that, hey, I feel intimidated by saying this. It's like saying I'm intimidated by saying I'm a lover of something. So that was pretty profound to me. But here are some of the interactions I've heard out in the field. Now, these are interactions and comments made by people who are on their own journeys with photography, whether they started a week ago, a month ago, or 30 years ago. And people go out into the field to shoot for so many more reasons than just to get the perfect print, right? They shoot because they're escaping from something, or escaping to something, or celebrating something, or having the last hurrah, or whatever it might be. But people are out in the field shooting, and photography is just the medium. It's not the be-all and the end-all. But we get judged by it sometimes if we don't have the best gear and we don't have the best prints and all those things. So I've listened to people that have just randomly come up to me out in the field. Maybe they have a question or something like that, and this is what they say. I'm sorry, I'm not a pro, but could you, and it's usually, help me with something or answer a question or something like that. But they're apologizing for that. I'm just an amateur, as if they have to have a disclaimer because they have a question. I'm sorry to bug you, I'm just a newbie. And it feels so bad to me that it's like, good, I'm glad you're new to this. You're going to be on this wonderful journey. But we get intimidated by that because somebody along the way has made us feel bad. And I hate that. This is supposed to be fun, right? So I've asked them those things. Here's a few more. I just can't afford your lens, but ... and they insert whatever thing they need to say. Or, yeah, but I can't buy a better camera right now. And I don't pass any judgment. Whatever camera you have is good with me. Whether it's your cell phone, I don't care if it's a pinhole camera. But whatever you want to do to experiment with photography and see the world in a different way, I'm good with. I would never pass judgment for why somebody has this piece of gear versus this piece of gear. You make the decisions, you choose what you want to use for 100 reasons I couldn't possibly be informed enough about to know or pass judgment on. But we've all had it happen to us. So anyhow, the things that I've noticed are a lot of things with stigma and status around photography. And I find it interesting and sad because we're supposed to be loving this, whether we're professionals or amateurs. We're supposed to be loving this, but it's really turned into, in some cases, and I'm saying this because I want new photographers to be coming into this field. It's a wonderfully rich and beautiful field. But it creates a classist dichotomy at times. And people have insecurities and ineptitude. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I mean, we all, want to learn something new and are a little bit intimidated and so forth about things we're trying to learn. That's normal. But I don't want it to take over. Because I've had people say, yeah, I took a photography class, but the photographer instructor was so condescending or went way off into the deep end right away and didn't really start at the beginning. And I just lost interest. I was overwhelmed and I was done. And I don't want to lose those people. These are wonderful people. And the photography fairy doesn't bequeath you with photography knowledge at birth, right? We all have been in that very first step, the first time we held a camera, and it goes from there. So I always want to keep that in mind when I'm talking to anybody enjoying photography. So all of us, I'm sure many of us in this room, also feel the pressure to monetize our craft. And I find this interesting with photography as well, because there's this need or perceived need to get ROI from our gear, right? It's like, oh, I just bought this $4,000 thing, whatever it is, lens, camera, whatever, and now I need to monetize it, right? And I find this so interesting. It's practically a public expectation. And I laugh because, okay, we're all supposed to make money with photography. That's the expectation or the pressure we at least put on ourselves, if not others putting it on us. And you know what? The guy that buys a Harley, he doesn't be expected to monetize it, right? No one walks around and says, oh, are you going to give tours on your Harley now that you bought it? You better make some money off of that thing, right? Santa Claus does, apparently. Nobody buys a boat and says, gee, I need to go and give boat rides all day in order to monetize my boat. No, they buy it. This is my dad's boat, by the way, that he restored. But they buy it, they have fun with it, they go and enjoy it. You're not supposed to sit and monetize everything that you enjoy, that you are a lover of. Planes, right? Campers, whatever it is that you want to buy and do, nobody expects you to rent out your camper so that you can make a little money on the side. No, but photography, we're supposed to monetize it all the time, and it puts this crazy pressure on us. So I want to come back to that amateur and get people to be proud of the fact that you are an amateur, you're a lover of something, and that's a pretty cool thing. Not everybody in this world has figured out how to love something and enjoy it as passionately as we can as photographers. So I then asked people, going back to this question, have you ever been talked down to or subjected to unsolicited criticism and rudeness and so forth pertaining to your photography or your gear or whatnot? And when I looked at the results, 36% said, yep, that's happened to me. Again, not the majority, but 36% of people have received criticism about something they're trying to enjoy. Find that bizarre. So, you know what I call those people? Yeah, glass holes. And if you can't read it in the bag, it says, any photographer who tells you how amazing their gear is compared to yours. So anyhow, that's my term for those folks. And here's a few that I've experienced, right? And some of them very recently. So I've had people tell me, well, by charging people for your classes, you're making photography elitist and classist. And I'm thinking, okay, we all need to make a living. Apparently welfare is a better option, So that was interesting. I was at an art show once, and I had my camera set up to show people what I use to photograph bears in the wild. And I had my bear pictures out, and this woman walks up to me, and she looks at my lens. She goes, oh, did your husband buy that for you? Like, no, all me, all the time. I've had, oh, you use Photoshop? You're one of those. Like one of the 99%? All right. And if not Photoshop, some other processing tool, Luminar or whatever. Or I love this one, have fun. This was one when I was moving from part-time photography and full-time consulting and psychology work to full-time photography. Have fun. Good luck making any money. Okay, 3.5 years later, I'm still doing all right. And then this last one, Lisa, I doubt you're gonna make it. And all I wanna say is I'm here and I'm helping people do photography, and I love every minute of it. Even when it's hard, I still really love it. And I'm doing it, self-sustaining. So I looked at that and that data, and I asked people, well, how did that make you feel, and did it impact your work? And negatively or positively? And about 27, 28% said negatively, and I find that sad. But the others, it either had no effect or it drove them to do better. So it is interesting. Not everybody, goes home and feels bad about it, but enough people do that I feel like I really wish I could reach those people who are negatively impacted and help them. So the main comments that they told me they heard were things like, you're not good enough. People would look at their images. You're not good enough. Now, we all need to learn and grow, and critiques are a wonderful thing. But there's a lot of magic in how you can do a critique, and you can be really negative and harsh and turn people off, or you can really honestly be helpful and help them understand what to do and what's good and what to do better. Gear, oh, it's not good enough. I had a dear friend of mine who went out to shoot one day, and her mom has needed a lot of home care, and she can't afford the nursing home anymore. And all of her money goes to help her mom. Her mom now lives at her home. And it's a really unfortunate situation. Her mom has dementia, and it's just stressful. She doesn't get a lot of respite time. So one day, not long ago, she went out to a local riparian preserve where I live in Arizona, and she went shooting. And she's got an older camera. She hasn't had the chance to upgrade it, but it works fine for her. And for her, it was the vehicle that she used to get out into nature and get away from some of the stressors at home. So she's shooting a bird out in the water. And this guy walks up to her and he looks at her camera and he says, "You really think you can get good images with that?" And it was just enough that it broke the camel's back for her. She had a very stressful thing going on, and it was just not the negativity she needed, and she just kind of broke down and left and, was struggling with some things. And I thought, that guy has no reason to even begin to understand why she was there with that camera at that time, at that place. And it isn't always about the prettiest image. It's about so much more. You get told, "Oh, you're just an amateur," or "Have you won anything in a contest?" "Oh, you haven't." Oh, right? All the condescension comes out. How many images have you sold? That's another one, right? "Oh, do you sell your work?" "Oh, how much?" "How much do you sell yours for?" All these kind of things to judge and evaluate where you are with your journey in terms of how other people interpret your journey should be. So income-related questions are a lot of things going on these days, and bragging, oh my God, the bragging, it's just obnoxious. So anyway, I asked those 560 photographers, what is most important to you, right? Because we understand people are judging us. People might be putting us down and all these things. So what's really most important? And this was my favorite aha moment. I loved this part of the data that I collected. So I asked them, and I put in random order, 9 different things. And I asked people to rank their most important down to the least important of those 9 items. And here's how the data fell out. Number 9 was generating income. Yet that's something that we get beaten up for and questioned about, right? Number 8, acquiring new gear. Number 7, recognition, prestige, awards, those kinds of things, attaboys, attagirls. Number 6, photography gives me social and or me time. That was 6th most important for people. 5th most important was having a meaningful experiences and relationships that you wouldn't otherwise have. I think photography can do that for us so much. I've had so many amazing moments through photography. It's a vehicle to get you to experience life in such a different way. Number 4 was having an outlet for learning and creative expression. So right now, today, you're having that outlet. That's number 4, according to 560 photographers. So that's why you're here. It's one of your top priorities. Number 3, not number 1 for photographers. Number 3 was capturing a beautiful image. I found that really striking. That was not your most important thing. Number 2 was bringing myself or others joy through my images and work. And that's a really big priority one for me as well. But I found that really inspiring. Number 1, discovering my world. I just love that. And that is why we do so much of this. That's why we fly to the far-flung places and photograph the zebras or the pelicans or the penguins or the glaciers or the deserts, wherever we go. It's discovering your world. And you do that because you went and picked up this camera. And it gets you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. It gets you to go places. It gets you to buy things too. But it gets you to do so many things and have so many conversations and meet so many friends and experience things and food and places and cultures that you couldn't do on your own without it. So if number 1 is discovering my world, then, and I look at the data and here's how it shook out, number 1 was discovering my world, right? And number 7, 8, and 9 were recognition, acquiring new gear, and generating an income. Then you know what? The glass holes have it all wrong. Would you agree? So if the glass holes have it all wrong, what are we doing right and what can we do? And so thinking about photography and what it is to us, the non-glass holes, all of the people in this room, right? Yeah. So what is photography to us? And to me, photography really is a journey. From beginning to end, if there is an end, It's really a journey about meeting people, learning, growing, seeing things, discovering cultures, learning about conservation, learning about animals, wildlife, people, how to do things. We learn technical things. We learn. And then we go and do, and we apply that knowledge, and we get more creative, and we make more relationships. And boy, I can't tell you how many times I've been out in the field, and I may have not gotten the best shot that day, but I've had some really amazing experiences, and have seen some really incredible things. So photography is a journey. And when I ask people, okay, so you're on this journey, I talked about the glass holes, let's talk about the flip side. Have you ever interacted with a fellow photographer who inspired or encouraged you? And 86% said yes. 14% said no, and for those 14%, I'll be your champion. I will encourage you because I love this stuff. So 86%. So here's your next challenge. And I'm going to challenge you tomorrow, because your today post was going to be about, anybody remember? Yes, your greatest experiences in photography, yes. So tomorrow on social media, I want you to thank that person or persons, somebody that has been your champion with this. It's important for those people to realize how they've influenced you. So do that for me. And then hashtag it so I can see them. Okay? And you already have that picture. So photography is a journey, for sure. But photography is also the creative process in that journey. I mean, we could walk around with a camera on our neck and never do anything and still have experiences, but we do have an experience through the actual act of taking a picture itself. So photography is the creative process, right? So I've been doing really creative things lately, photographing hummingbirds on white backgrounds and doing a lot of very different things. I do a lot with interior art, so art for all kinds of places, for lodging or hotels or homes or restaurants. And they like things that are different from our classic nature and wildlife kind of calendar and magazine style photography. So I've really had fun delving into that world. And that takes me back to some of my floral design and interior decorating skills. But photographing nature, these are wild poppies. You know what? I shot those just natural light on a bright sunny day with a white piece of poster board behind them. And instant art in a very different way. So taking nature and translating it for people into something that's more contemporary and different and something that looks good on their wall in their house. So I love getting creative. For me, that creative aspect is one of my favorite things with photography. And if you joined my session earlier on creativity, I hope that was inspiring as well. Motion blur, slow shutter. This is at Bosque del Apache, one of my favorite moments because it really captures those blast off of the snow geese and how powerful that is. And it's palpable, that cacophony of sound and wing beats. If you've never been, put it on your bucket list before you kick the bucket, because it's one of the most amazing experiences, seeing those geese. But I also do vintage wildlife, and that is something that has really transformed how I can sell my wildlife and honor wildlife. But I process it, frame it, hand frame it. My dad and I have built these frames together. It was a fun project. And these things are selling like crazy. It's vintage. It is from Arizona, all Arizona wildlife, Arizona reclaimed wood, the whole thing. And it just transforms and sells so much better than my classic nature and wildlife stuff that you would see in calendars and magazines. And it's been a fun experiment and a really fun way to show off art in a different way for people. So I've really enjoyed that process. But in addition to the creativity and the artistic part being a part of the journey for me and for all of us, photography is really a gift. And so I asked people about that in this survey of 560 photographers. And I pulled a story from that today. And one of them was, after my mom passed when I was 24, communication between my dad and I was strained. We couldn't find a lot of common ground. Then, in 1994, he asked me to join him on an Arizona highways photography workshop. I'd only used a small point and shoot, so he gave me his old Canon AE1, and that's a film camera. I had 2 months to learn how to use it. That experience helped to heal both my dad and I. It sparked my passion for photography. It gave us a common interest that has carried us through the rest of his life. The power of a camera, right? And the photography. So photography changes lives. It changes our lives, but it can so often change the lives of the people that we interact with because we were walking around with a camera that day. And I do have a personal life-changing story for me with photography, and I keep this in the back of my mind literally every day when I go out. I will never forget this experience. So I'm in New Orleans a few years ago for a photography convention, and I went with a friend of mine, and there were a couple hours of light left after the day's events were done. I said, come on, let's go down the French Quarter. We'll go shoot whatever we can shoot and just have fun. So we did. And I love shooting people. I call them people in their natural environment. But I love shooting characters and people from different cultures and all kinds of things. So anyway, I set up, first of all, my tripod. And there was this rusty, crusty, kind of grungy, graffitied up building that I wanted to photograph. So I set up my tripod, I'm getting ready to shoot. And as I'm looking through it to frame my composition, this guy with a guitar walks in front of it. And I looked, and I was like, he looks interesting. And so I said, hey. And he looks, and I introduced myself. I said, hey, I'm Lisa, I'm a photographer. I said, could I photograph you? And he kind of looked at me skeptically. I said, no, it'd be fun. I said, look, I'll tip you, I'll take care of you. Because I didn't know if he was on his way to a gig, if he was a street performer. I didn't know anything about him other than he had a guitar slung on his back and was walking that way. So he's kind of skeptical and sort of cautiously optimistic. And he said, okay. He said, but only if I can play you an original song. Well-timed, by the way. So I said, all right, even better. So we're videotaping him and, taking pictures and, really encouraging him because he was a little bit nervous at first. And so we took all these pictures, and about 10 minutes later, the light had kind of gone for what we were trying to do. And he was profoundly gracious for this time. He's like, you have no idea how much I appreciate this. This meant a lot to me. And I said, oh my gosh, it's fine. I tipped him like $10. I said, give me your email address. I'll send you some pictures in the video when we get them done. And he just kept saying, no, you have no idea how much this meant to me. And we're like, no, it's good. We had fun, happy to do it, blah, blah, blah. And we went our separate ways. Well, a couple days later, my friend and I were still at the conference, and it was early in the morning, and our flight left mid-morning. And I said, let's go early down to the French Quarter before it's busy with people, and we'll go shoot some more of the buildings in that early morning light. So we go down, and we're walking around, and all of a sudden I hear, Lisa. And I turn around, and it's the guy that we saw the other night, photographed. And I said, oh my gosh. I'm like, hi, good to see you. And we're talking, and he comes up, and he gives us a big hug. And he's like welling up, and he said, you have no idea how much that meant to me the other night. And I was like, oh my God, it was fine. We had fun. Like, it's okay. As my boyfriend would say, no more thank yous. Because I'm always appreciative of everything he does. So anyway, I'm like, it's good. We're good with the pictures. I'm happy to do it. He says, no. He said, there has been so many things going on in my life. He said, I lost my job. I haven't had a lot of money. My family's had issues. I'm struggling, this and that. And he says, when you stopped me, I was on my way to commit suicide. And so I have kept him in my mind all these years, and we still keep in touch, maybe once a year. But he's now living in California, from what I understand, and doing much better. But I will never forget the power of a photograph and the interactions that we have with people. And that's something that stays with me every day. So I challenge you every day, in real life, not just social media, but in real life, to consider how your photography can change lives, not just yours, but someone else's, or an animal's life, or a community's life. So please hashtag me in that, because I want to see how you do with that as well. And hashtag this event, because this event's pretty darn amazing. So ultimately, our journey with photography really truly is your vision for the world you want others to see and experience, whether it's through your photography or through you because you do photography. So on that note, I also do some writing with my photography, and I want to leave you with something inspirational so that when you go out and shoot with us tonight, if you're going to the photo walk this evening, which I hope you are, you can take this with you. Okay. I want to say thanks again to Tamron and to PhotoPro for having me here, and of course to B&H and David for having us here. I really hope this has helped you with your own journey, and I look forward to seeing you sometime down the road.